Hello YouTube friends, Dr. Teresa Ulrich here again. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Today's video, we're bringing the garden into the kitchen. Here you're looking at a pumpkin that I grew in my backyard garden, and we're going to turn it into pumpkin pie. So I get started by washing off the pumpkin and making sure it's clean enough to use. And then I prepare it by cutting it in half and getting ready to clean it out. I am collecting the seeds as I do that. So once I get the first side done, I start working on the second side. The same process, collecting the seeds and getting the insides out. Here you can see the seeds that I got. Not a lot for a big pumpkin. And then I'm finishing up the touches, getting the rest of the insides out with a spoon. My next step is to cut the pumpkin into different pieces so they're going to fit on some cookie sheets, which will go in the oven, and they're going to bake at 350 degrees. While that's cooking, I rinse my seeds very well. I put some in a tray with water and sea salt, and I put some others aside to dry out because I want to use those to start my pumpkin garden for next year. Now I'm getting ready to make the pastry or pie crusts. It's a very simple recipe. You can find many recipes online, but I'm going to use a recipe from an old cookbook that my mother used to use. You'll see the cookbook is very old. It's been taped up several times, but I still keep it. It's the American Woman's Cookbook, and that was published in 1963. So the pastry or pie crust recipe is very simple, just 4 ingredients. 2 cups of flour, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 2/3 cups of shortening, 4 to 6 tablespoons of water, and that varies depending on humidity. So I'm putting together all the ingredients, my flour, my salt. Now I'm adding the shortening. And my next step is to blend these together. And I'm using a pastry blender designed to mix shortening and flour together, but you can use a knife and a fork if that works. And you want to work the dough so it is a moist consistency. Again, you want the flour pieces to be about the size of a pea. So it looks pretty good. I'm ready to start adding my cold water, and the water should be cold so it doesn't melt the shortening. I'm going ahead and adding the 4 tablespoons right away, and then I'll see if I need to add more. But I want to mix it very well and give all the flour an opportunity to get moistened. That consistency was really good, so I didn't add any more, but I am putting it in a small bowl so it will fit in the refrigerator, and it will let the shortening solidify a little bit more. Meanwhile, after a couple of hours, it looks like the pumpkin is ready. You can see the liquid on top, it's soft, and so I'm going to let it cool and move on to my next steps. You're looking here at a pumpkin pie pan that was originally a gift from my godmother, and I like this pan because it has a recipe for making pumpkin pie. So here are the ingredients I'm using: my pumpkin, my sugar, honey, eggs, sea salt, cinnamon, ginger, clove, nutmeg. And if you don't want to buy separate spices, you can always buy a pumpkin pie spice and use the amount equivalent in total of all the spices, or you can follow the recipe on the back of your jar. I know you can't see it here, but a lot of times pumpkin spice does have a recipe. And there's my condensed milk. I'll also post the ingredients at the bottom in my description below the video for your convenience. That was my 1 cup of water, and you see that I'm going to bake this at 425 degrees to start. So I've preheated the oven, and now I'm pulling out my parchment paper to prepare the pastry. So the oven is heating up, It needs to be at 425 degrees by the time I'm ready to put the pie in there. I put some flour down on the parchment to prevent it from sticking. I'm piecing out or portioning out my dough for the amount I think I'm going to need to roll out one pastry or one pie crust. And I'm putting a little flour on top to prevent it from sticking to my rolling pin. The rolling pin I have is really nice. It's a marble rolling pin, and that prevents it from being less sticky, but it's also heavy, so it helps press out. That was a gift many years ago when I first got married. So I've rolled out the pastry, a little bigger than the size of the actual pie pan so that it can sit down in there. And as I'm taking this off, you'll notice there's a little bit of ripping, tearing, some holes. That's not that unusual, and it's really easy to repair. Nobody really notices. As long as most of the pie pastry is intact, I don't worry about it. So I just go ahead and trim up the edges so there's no overhang, and then some of the pieces I'm using to fill any tears or gaps. And once I'm done with that, then I start making a more decorative edge, just pinching the dough between my fingers. And you'll see I'm just basically taking my index finger and pushing it into my thumb and index finger on my other hand, and I'm going around until I've completed this process for the entire pie. So there's my finished crust, and when I'm done, I'm going to put that aside because I need to start working on the filling. Now you'll notice I'm not following instructions exactly. Basically, I've experimented over the years, and I found efficient ways to do this that seem to work. Now right now I'm cutting off the pumpkin from the shell, and because I don't have a 1 cup measuring cup, I don't know what happened to it, I just have a half cup one. I'll have to fill that half cup measuring cup 3 times to get my 1.5 cup of pumpkins in there. And notice I'm just putting it right in there. I'm not mashing it up because I am going to let the blender do all that work for me. Next, I'm putting in the other flavors. So here's my half cup of sugar. And now I'm using a special measuring cup to measure out a 1/4 cup of honey. And you'll see with my special measuring cup, I'll just be able to push that honey right in there. I don't have to worry about scraping it out like I would with a regular measuring cup. My 2 eggs, it says that they should be beaten, but you know what? Because I'm just mixing everything in the blender, I'm letting the blender do all that work for me. My 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then my 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. 1/2 teaspoon of ginger, 1/4 teaspoon of clove, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and then my 1 cup of water. And then I'm going to measure out my condensed milk, 2/3 of a cup. And I've put everything in the blender, I've turned it on, and I'm letting it run on chop for about 2 or 3 minutes. And when it's ready, you won't hear any more chopping, and it'll be a nice frothy looking mix that we pour right into the pie shell. So we're going to put this into the oven. It should be at 425 degrees right now, and we're going to let it cook for 15 minutes at 425 degrees. And after the 15 minutes, we'll reduce the temperature down to 350 degrees for 45 minutes. After 45 more minutes, there's what the pie looks like. So now I'm going to let it cool, and then I have put in the pumpkin seeds at 350 for about a half hour, and they are prepared, ready to go, well seasoned. They sat in sea salt water all night, so those are going to be delicious. And after a few hours, the pie is cool. Notice it looks sunken, completely normal. That's how it turns out. That is real pumpkin pie. And then finally, my other seeds that I've saved are completely dry. I'm going to put them in a paper envelope, And I use paper because if there is any moisture, I don't want it to trap inside and have the seeds accidentally start sprouting. Well, we've gone full cycle. We'll start again next year with new pumpkins. Thanks so much for joining me. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and click subscribe to Cowfish Pro. Thank you.